Okay, it's 2:30 by my calculations. Please come and join us at this plenary session on promoting research integrity and enhancing the, apologies, actions and initiatives towards an increasingly responsible European research culture. Welcome, everyone. We have two distinguished speakers, and then we'll conclude with the launch of ENRIO's new web publication. Come on in. And I think we'll get to it. So it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce the first speaker of this session, Dr. Isidoros Karatzas, the head of the Research Ethics and Integrity Sector of the European Commission Directorate General for Research and Innovation, and a friend of ENRIO. And Isidoros will give us a talk on promoting research integrity and enhancing the European leadership. So let's get started and invite our second speaker on the stage. So I'm very glad to introduce to you Krista Varantola, who has served as vice chair on the board of ALEA. She has also chaired the drafting group that updated the ALEA Code of Conduct for Research and Integrity. She is Chancellor Emerita of the University of Tampere in Finland, and she has also chaired the Finnish National Board on Research Integrity, TENK, for 9 years. So let's get going.
Okay, can you hear me? Let's start with that. No? Yes? Okay, no, good. You can't hear me from, yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay. Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about the revised code, European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, the ECOC as it tends to be known these days. But one thing is forgotten from this title, and that's the ALEA code. So I'm speaking from the point of view of the ALEA group on science and ethics, permanent working group, where this drafting group was part of it. So because some of the ideas, our principles are definitely ALEA principles and been accepted. But so let's start by going quickly through the process and to remind you of it and then to talk about have some reflections on the code and its uses. So what has changed since 2017 when the first code was published? We can these days benefit, as we've heard, from many results from news sources, European project outcomes, practical tools, fit for purpose implementations, the different toolboxes, and so on. And what has also changed, which I think is a very important development, is that when we think of research integrity, the focus is shifting from the individual researcher to the whole system, to all actors, and to avoiding counterproductive incentives, particularly in funding decisions and funding formulae. New developments in technology, obviously, we already talked about them, have had a major impact on our thinking of integrity. So, oops, this is not how it looks. It's green. I don't know when this was changed, the color, but anyway, and some of you already got the paper version, so it's light green and a very optimistic color. It's the key updates then in this group are in response to these social, political, technological developments. I've highlighted the ones which I think are probably the most fundamental changes. The importance of research culture, total enabling research integrity, recent developments in open science, research assessment, and the use and impact of social media to share and disseminate research results. Obviously, new developments and applications in technology always have an effect over the years. Changes in data management practices and so on. But equally important is what has not changed. The key principles, the key messages that Dorian already mentioned. And the thing that to remember is that ECOC is a recommendation. It's soft law, it's a recommendation based on self-regulation of research. Remember that it comes from an association of European academies of science and learning. So science and what is it? Science and learning, I think many of them are called. And that the ECOC refers to all research fields. And the approach, as already been said, is non-punitive. We don't start from the punishment, and we try to avoid the need of punishment by describing what is good academic behavior and how to show respect in an academic community. So the principles that we've cited many times is the or do I have them on this slide? No, they come later. But also and I think in this new code or current code that was published this summer, we try to emphasize the fact that all actors in the research community are responsible, and they need to realize that integrity is a sine qua non in research. Otherwise, I mean, why do research? We don't need results that are based on misconduct. It's an essential part of quality assurance in research performing organizations. And this is how the process went. We started collecting ideas and inputs. Of course, the COVID time meant a certain time out in the process. We wanted to have this out much earlier, but then because we realized then that it was impossible to rewrite and talk or discuss the code online, so we waited till it was possible to meet in person. So we prepared the first draft, sent it to the ALEA different working groups and ALEA board, got feedback, and then consulted stakeholders, which 31 responded. And the difference between the first code and this one was that now there was a lot of interest for what we'd done, much more than because, of course, the first 2017 version had become so well known and applied, so there were comments. And then we had meetings where we implemented the feedback, and this was a very, very thorough process. I would say more thorough than usually if you ask for it. That we really went through all the comments and decided then how to implement or whether to implement them in the code. And I would like to show you the drafting group who were involved. Maura Heine, who's the chair of the Permanent Working Group of Science and Ethics in Alea, and then Göran Hermeren from Sweden, Deborah Doughton from Norway, Lisa Maria Herzog representing the Global Young Academy, and Lies van Damme from Royal Academy in Belgium. So we had this drafting consisted of old hands and new hands. So, and it was really a very dedicated group that really took this process very seriously. So then what's going on here in Europe at the moment? And I think a definite paradigm change, a reassessment of the indicators used for research performance. Quality is coming back, or has come back as a prime indicator. More focus on collaboration instead of brutal competition, appreciating cross-disciplinary efforts. And that has of course been a problem for past 10, 20 years. I mean, it's in all the program descriptions, but very hard still to implement in many cases. And COARA, Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment. And this will have a major impact in the years to come. And I think that is, and also probably on the next version of the code. So hopefully we can say that these used to be the main causes for misconduct. So some reflections on what does the ECOC mean in practice? I think it aims to create a mindset favorable to research integrity throughout the research process and get rid of this tick the box mentality. I mean, once you tick the box, you can forget about it. That's not the idea. It should be ingrained in the system, in the research process, throughout the process, from the beginning or from the design stage to the end. And to inspire discussions and debates in this EU project that have vouched to and committed to the code, got money, to inspire discussions and debates on what these principles, what this code means in our case, what are the specialities, what are the details, what are in our particular field, in our particular project. To recommend ongoing training. Again, the training is not a one-off thing, but goes throughout the process, needs to be targeted at the different groups. And to emphasize institutional responsibilities to provide this adequate and inspiring training. And look at RI as an essential part of quality assurance. To focus on non-punitive approaches, and that is a big problem, because we know that a problem with potential sanctions is that they're usually targeted at the individual researcher, not at the institution, for example, or the funder, or the government for that matter. And we are in a way on our approach from general tools to precision tools. That's our tool set these days in research integrity, a garage full of tools for different purposes. Different levels of concreteness, but compatible with each other. This sort of layered structure from the principal codes that need to be made operational in different contexts. So hopefully this will lead to harmonization in ethical thinking, not normative uniformity. That would be impossible and counterproductive, but practical and solid implementations that other projects, other programs can learn from. So these tools together should also help decision makers to design healthy financial incentives. Funding criteria based on collaboration, respect, quality, understanding of what research and innovation are about. And I couldn't help quoting this. I love this quote from Simon Singh's book of development of science, and says that the French Academy of Sciences in Paris was set up in 1666 so that scientists could pursue independent research free from having to pander to the whims of kings, queens, and popes. We can think of where these persons now exist and maybe have something to say to them. But there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We're getting there. ECOC is a framework code that applies to all disciplines. And we need these different types of tools that are compatible. We need them like the SOPs for RI has produced this for different target groups to think about. I mean, institutions, administration, funding organizations, and so on. Reviewers of research proposals, and publishers alike. So because we can all agree on these principles. One question that has come up during these years, and I think in many projects, if particularly our innovation-oriented projects, that if it's technologically feasible, it will be done, and we'll think of ethics afterwards. And that, of course, is not the right way to approach these things. So therefore, ethics by design is an effort to answer these problems, include ethics from the very start and before the start of a project, to think about what implications our research will have on ethics, and is it ethical? Is it ethical to replace humans by avatars who try to take care of the old people at their homes? Things. It's technologically feasible, but from a human point of view, totally unacceptable, I think. Just take one example. And I think that RI tools can also help to turn the attitude from a necessary evil, because that is a problem with these ethical guidelines, and when you have to tick the box and go through them, to a positively charged ethical mindset, inbuilt vigilance. And they can help improve the quality of the research. So I see ECOC as an interactive checklist, a dialogue. If you have a project and you write guidelines for your project, you have a discussion with the ECOC and see how does this affect that? Do we need to say something more specific on this point? So on. And as always, all these documents are living documents in the sense that they need to be revised, updated, depending on the developments. So I expect that even this ECOC will need a revision in 5 years' time or so. Then last slide. Just the question, is ECOC 23 an influential code? I think, well, we heard here that it has had quite a lot of influence. I mean, the old version, because I think EU still has to adopt the new code. But I think its influence is based on the fact that it's a recommendation based on self-regulation. It's a non-punitive guidelines, and it has an emphasis on continuous interactive training throughout the research process. It has this EU legal backing. EU, from the EU point of view, Dorian talked about it, but I think it is once you commit yourself to this, it means that you have to devise the necessary guidelines for your particular project, operational guidelines when needed, and use. So it is, in that sense, it goes throughout the different levels of concreteness. ECOC is a framework code, But a code needs to be internalized before it becomes powerful. And I think that this time it was in the revision and the feedback process meant just this, that because it was this revision process was closely followed with detailed feedback and relevant comments from the stakeholders. And the feedback was carefully considered, balanced out, implemented. And also the drafting group, particularly Mora, we need to thank in this case, provided detailed feedback to the stakeholders about the decisions made by the drafting group. So in a sense, ECOC is a summary of collective thought processes. It's a shared vision among stakeholders. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Krista. Okay. Questions from the audience, please. All right, we have two already. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Philippe Braun from Paris Cité. I, am always surprised that there is not much emphasis on quality insurance in all those recommendations, because that's probably a very initial precaution which avoid a lot of mistakes, I would say, in integrity, in scientific integrity.
I'm sorry, I couldn't really hear.
I'm speaking about quality insurance.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but that was not emphasized in any of the speech I have heard about.
I said research integrity is an essential part of quality assurance. Of course, because quality assurance is also used in a very different context. And we have these different quality assurance policies throughout Europe that are applied in different ways. I've always thought that it's a problem of quality assurance that they have not mentioned that research integrity is an essential part. Thought about from the other, but quality. Of course, you have to define what you mean by quality. Is it research quality? I mean. We can have bad research. We can have good research, but they can still be. I mean, very often bad research and issues with research integrity are related, but not necessarily.
Yes, but that would be a good basis, because I'm working also in hospital and in research lab. And in hospital, it's mandatory that you follow some quality principle in the biology labs. And it's extremely helpful to be very confident in all the results you get. And I think it should be emphasized in integrity research. It would help a lot.
Again, it's one area, discipline-specific code, an area you're talking about, and ECOC does not aim to be at that concrete level. It requires different disciplines to have their own codes, because you might need a very different code for languages or history, or so you have to have, and very many normative codes are related to biosciences, and that's a different thing. So.
Thank you. Then we have a question on this side.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the code itself, actually. I was a bit curious about your insistence, and also the previous speaker's insistence on the non-punishing aspect of things. Because actually, if you look at the code itself, it has one part, one section which is about good things that researchers should do, and then a second part about bad things that they shouldn't do. And both are quite important. And although I completely agree on the necessity to focus on the system, on the reward culture, and so on, actually punishment also signals something. And I don't have the impression that we have a problem with over punishment of researchers. And if I may just say one last very small thing, one thing that I particularly liked in the code, and I'm pleased it's still there in the new version, in the list of breaches, there is the fact of not reporting misconduct. And I think that this is very important also for further discussions we will have about whistleblowing. This is part of whistleblowing protection, and I wish it was more appreciated that there is an obligation to report misconduct.
Okay, by non-punitive here, I mean that we try to emphasize the importance of training and adopting good practices. Then at the end we list, of course it can't be an exhaustive list of what is not on and what is punishable. But then the punishments, the sanctions come from depends on the national codes, national systems, whether it's a legal system, whether it's a self-regulated system, depends on those codes. For example, in the Finnish codes, the sanctions belong to the universities who are committed to the code, and they decide on the sanctions. And of course, sanctions are important, but you have to think of the different role of junior researchers, senior researchers, and also I think you have to think of the role of the institution. And so, did the institution help the researcher with problems? But that's what I mean by non-punitive. We try to start from the good end.
Okay, and Dorian wants to comment on. Yes.
Thank you for the question. No, we agree with you. What I meant to mention was the fact that a lot of the misconduct that we find being resulting into punishment could be prevented easily before. I'm not talking about the 5% that will happen anyway, no matter how many codes and procedures you have, but I'm talking about the majority of the cases that could be prevented. So prevention is better than cure, and that's why we think punishment should come only if everything else is in place to avoid it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I only need the one mic. Okay, with that, let's thank our speaker. Thank you, Krista. And now we change roles.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce Anni, because Anni is now going to talk about the new. Do you want to put the slides on? Or? Yeah, ENRIO's online bulletin. Ripe, if it's pronounced the Finnish way, ripe if it's pronounced the English way, but you're free to decide how to pronounce it. And Anni is a senior coordinator at the Finnish National Board on Research Integrity, and she's the lead editor of research integrity of this research integrity practice in Europe, a bulletin, Ripe. And it's published by ENRIO and has been established during the first phase of ENRIO, of the last, when ENRIO, not first phase, but last phase when ENRIO had its headquarters in Finland. And Anni is the primus motor of the
hands of
firebrand behind it. So
That's right.
Anni will tell us about it.
All right. Okay, thank you. So to close this session, I'm very glad to talk to you a little bit about this new online publication published by ENRIO and its launch officially today, but we published the first articles earlier this week. So to briefly explain to you the key idea of RIPE. Initially, it started as ENRIO's former chair Sanna-Kaisa Spoof's vision to launch an online publication for ENRIO that would serve particularly as the proceedings of the ENRIO Congress series. And it has since expanded a little bit. And in a nutshell, RIPE is for brief and informative practice-oriented articles on research integrity in Europe for research integrity practitioners in particular. We have a great editorial board in alphabetical order: Jodis Chesnik, Panagiotis Kavouras, Anna Marusic, and I run the sort of practical side of things from TENK. Yes. Okay, so the purpose of RIPE is to, first of all, provide information of research integrity work and activities in Europe in a concise, accessible form. It's structured kind of like a blog, but the articles themselves, they're not blog posts as such. In addition, RIPE will be, I think, a good support for EU projects in their communication and dissemination activities. So in projects, when you have completed deliverables, reached milestones, if you have policy proposals, something like that, important research related details that would be really important for the general public to know of, you could write a short, concise article about them in RIPE. So, and something that I think EU projects and all projects kind of have to think about and struggle with is how could they communicate about the work, whether to start a blog. Probably not the best use of project resources to start a blog. So please consider RIPE for these purposes. It can also complement the Embassy of Good Science. So if a new resource is uploaded on the Embassy platform, you could write a short article about it in RIPE with links back and forth. And overall, this, I think, could also serve the function of a science communication on research integrity for the general audience. Here are the launch articles. They are many contributions for the first ENRIO Congress that was held online in 2021. We have a really nice selection of papers that all sort of discuss that they have the general theme of fostering good research culture, and with the focus in mostly in the country of the authors, from Norway, from Finland, collaboration between Estonia and Ukraine, Lithuania, and so on. So some practical information, what we look for in submissions. Please, you can contact me with a very low threshold to discuss whether you think something might be suitable for RIPE. A couple of key points to keep in mind. We have a very sort of practice-oriented focus. So we do not have a peer review system, like an academic peer review system in place. We don't publish original research articles or other kind of work that requires that type of peer review. However, if you want to publish a kind of general knowledge snippet of information about a research article, then RIPE could be a good channel for that. Length, fairly short, as you can see, kind of like a blog post length in a way. A bit longer is fine as well, from 500 to about 1,500 words. And I hope that we could establish this principle that each article would have a clearly defined key point, because the length itself, the scope of a RIPE article is not very extensive. So with one clear defined key idea, it's also easier to write and edit. So we, with the editorial board, we will go through submissions and edit them together with the authors. And so far, I think we've been able to establish a pretty nice process. So I'm the contact person. Might be interesting for you to know that you can include it in a list of publications as a non-peer-reviewed publication intended for professional communities. And to close this short presentation and send us all off to the well-deserved break, we in RIPE, with the editorial board, look very much forward to developing this new publication together with the research integrity community. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from you, particularly all of you presenting at this Congress. Please keep RIPE in mind and perhaps we could be a good fit for your presentation or poster here at the Congress. Thank you. So let's go get some coffee. Oh, I don't know what they're serving, but I'm looking forward to it.